So Tulsi Gabbard has been avoiding the press, and let's face it, it's pretty much for really good reason since they've been smearing her nonstop. According to BuzzFeed News, Tulsi is not sending out press releases to reporters, and she's essentially leaving them with breadcrumbs to figure out where she's going to be turning up. So, for example, they said that they had discovered on a Facebook page that was called American Muslims for Tulsi Gabbard. But remember, she's an Islamophobe, right? They found out that she was going to be speaking at IEC Husseini in Chicago, which was it's an Islamic education center in a Chicago suburb. They say that they believe she was there because they saw a photograph of her freezing in Chicago. And anyway, apparently, according to some reports, she spoke to a largely Muslim crowd, and her standard stump speech was adjusted to emphasize her call to defend against religious bigotry, which she herself is a Hindu woman, and of course Muslims face. So they then went on to say that she went on to Iowa, where many of the candidates are campaigning, and there she did an event. It was in Des Moines. It was the Asian and Latino Coalition that had sent out a press release for a Sunday evening event the week before. So basically, the press releases are being sent out by the organizations that are hosting her. So she, as a campaign, is not sending out press releases to reporters, but the organizations that are having her come speak are sending out the press releases to their email lists or to their Facebook pages. And yeah, I mean, for really, really good reason, right? I mean, she's been smeared nonstop by the media. She goes and makes an appearance on MSNBC, and it was not friendly at all. In fact, I've got a couple of clips here when they were asking her about Assad. This is what made the big news last week. Watch this.
Do you think Assad is our enemy?
Assad is not the enemy of the United States because Syria does not pose a direct threat to the United States.
Assad is not an enemy. Is he an adversary of the United States?
We have to look to who poses a threat to the United States and the American people.
I understand that, but there are a lot of people who don't pose a direct military threat to the United States who consider themselves to be adversaries of the United States. Vladimir Putin poses or considers America to be an enemy. We consider Russia to be an adversary. I'm just asking you, do you consider Assad to be an adversary of the United States?
When I look at whether it's Syria or Turkey or Russia or China or other countries in the world, I look at what are their interests and are their interests counter to our interests.
So what would you say he is to the United States? If you cannot say that he's an adversary or an enemy, what is Assad to the U.S.? What is the word?
You can describe it however you want to describe it.
I want to know how you describe it.
My point is that whether it is Syria or any of these other countries, we need to look at how their interests are counter to or aligned with ours.
Are Assad's interests aligned with ours?
What are Assad's interests?
Assad seems interested in the slaughter primarily of his own people, in part. I mean, how does that line up? Survival, yes.
Exactly.
Well, he also
and he seems to be willing to go to great ends to do that.
He also uses weapons of mass destruction on his
adversary
as well.
We can talk about all these things. My point here is...
Is it important to talk about these things?
He
uses chemical weapons on his own people?
Of course. It's important to talk about how our military is being used, what it is costing them, what it is costing the American people, and whether or not those missions, those objectives serve the security of the United States and the American people.
If you haven't watched that entire interview, you really, really should, because it is, she represents herself really, really well. I have to say that she looks and sounds presidential. Really, really does. Very, very impressed with that interview. I mean, they were sharks trying to eat her alive, and she held them off really, really well. She answered the questions absolutely the way she should, and the way that everybody should. I mean, they're asking her, is Assad an enemy? No, of course he's not the enemy of the United States. Who would think that he is? Is he coming after us? Is he pointing nukes at us? I mean, you could say North Korea is an enemy of the United States. You could say that because they're constantly threatening us. But Assad and Syria they've not been at all. And then they want to go on and say, well, isn't he an adversary? Again, no. I mean, unless he's threatening us, unless he's saying, I'm coming after you, I hate you, America, I'm going to do all of these various things to you, whether it be military or, hacking into our systems or things like that, that is completely different. So no, Syria and Assad are not enemies, nor are they even adversaries of the United States. Now, you might not like Assad, but it doesn't make him your enemy. enemy or your adversary unless you're going to seek him out. I think he could say that the United States is the enemy of him. I think that would be fair for him to say, right? Because obviously there's many people calling for us to march in there and take the guy out and even assassinate the guy. So I guess he could think that. But it is not... It's very specific to call somebody your enemy or even your adversary. It's very specific. There are bad guys out there for sure, but they're not necessarily your enemy or even your adversary. So anyway, moving on from that, I do think that she held herself really, really well in that interview. You should watch it. I'm putting the link down below. I hate to funnel you off to watch some MSNBC, but watch some Tulsi because she just really holds her own, sounds presidential, and I really couldn't have been more proud of her in that interview. I thought she did a really great job. And some more smears. They were talking about how, this is what she's facing, right? She goes to these events. She's not releasing the press releases to the reporters. Instead, it's going out through the groups. She shows up at these events, and because of the smear against her, the questions she's being faced with are not necessarily about her policies, but questions like, are you an Islamophobe? Or are you pro-Assad? She's not pro-Assad. She's just not anti-Assad. There's a big difference there. An Islamophobe. People want to cite her ties to Modi. Well, let me just show you this. This is a Politico article from 2015, and it says Obama's risky bet on Modi. Goes on to say Obama, who is often portrayed as aloof, has few friends among foreign leaders, but there's a genuine, surprising warmth between him and Modi, say people familiar with both the U.S. and Indian governments. So where's the outrage about Obama being an Islamophobe because he's hanging out with Modi? Goes on to say for Obama, that embrace is about jump-starting a relationship with India that he's been trying to make happen since 2009 and using it to balance the emergence of China as the region's dominant player and to help rewrite the rules of Asia. For Modi, a Hindu nationalist whose past statements about India's Muslim minority and handling of a deadly anti-Muslim riot in the province of Gujarat have raised serious human rights alarms. It's about something more personal, trying to move beyond those who still believe he has blood on his hands and become the national and international player he clearly aspires to be. So Obama knew about the event, that everyone's persecuting Tulsi for being warming up to Modi. They're persecuting her about that event. This happened. Obama knew about it. Obama was warming up to him as well. In the middle is a nation of 1 billion, often very divided people, an economy emerging at hyperspeed, an arsenal of nuclear weapons, and Obama's long-term credibility as he elevates this man with the divisive right-wing nationalist past into a world leader. So if you want to criticize somebody about warming up to Modi, shouldn't you be criticizing Obama for actually, having him emerge into a world leader? I mean, shouldn't that be something you criticize him for? So the smear is amazing. I mean, it really, and so of course she's avoiding the press. Why would she go after the press? The best thing Tulsi Gabbard can do at this point is a grassroots campaign effort. Get out there, speak to groups, have the groups do the inviting, show up, impress the people when you do with your message of love and peace and anti-war. And I also find it really, really hypocritical when people criticize Tulsi and they say, well, I think she's really a hawk in dove's clothes. And these are the same people who, again, support Obama. I mean, the hypocrisy there. So, of course, she's dealing with this massive media smear, and she doesn't want to rope them into her campaign because all they are is adversarial. If you want to talk about an enemy or an adversary, it's certainly the media against Tulsi. And, the reason for it is twofold. First of all, if any anti-war candidate gets smeared, this dates way back to the progressive movement after World War II. If you are anti-war, then you are smeared. And in fact, there was actually a candidate. Who was it that ran against Nixon? I forgot his name. McGovern, I think, was the one who ran against Nixon. He was an anti-Vietnam War candidate. And you know what they did to him? The Democrats actually got together. He was a Democrat. Democrats actually got together and started Democrats for Nixon. And all of these prominent Democrats came out supporting Nixon because they said he was a better choice than their very own, because their very own was anti-war and wanted to pull back on the amount of money that the military was spending. That's what they will do to you. That's how bad it will get. If she ends up becoming the nominee, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do because, they're super afraid of Trump. So I don't know how they would possibly come out with a coalition of Democrats for Trump. I don't really see that happening. So that would put them, so the only thing they can do really is to smear her now, to get people to hate her now. It is effective. I'm hearing from people things like, her campaign is dead in the water because when she went to Iowa, her very first appearance there only had 13 people. Failing to mention that the reason was because Tulsi Gabbard's flight was canceled. The event was originally scheduled for 7 p.m. on a Sunday night. Probably a lot of people would have showed up. They had to reschedule it. Guess when they had to reschedule it for? Guess why 13 people showed up? Because it was rescheduled for Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. Who would go? Who shows up for that? 13 people showing up is actually pretty impressive for 7:30 on a Monday morning. Her next event that afternoon was well attended. Over 200 people showed up. And, so her campaign it is really important that she sticks with this grassroots effort and stay away from the media. They're just doing a smear job. It's only going to get worse. The second reason why they're doing it, the first is because she's anti-war, and anyone who's anti-war gets majorly smeared. The second reason is because she's such a threat to to what the establishment is pushing, right? They're saying that they want a woman minority. Okay, well, here you go. Here's your female minority. And that to them is against the narrative that, because they're really trying to push Kamala Harris, as you can see, and she's the female minority. And it's a lot easier to, let's say, disparage Bernie by saying, oh, he's an old white guy and people want change, even though completely missing the reason why people want change. So you can't do that to Tulsi, obviously, because she's a minority female and the first Hindu to serve in Congress and one of the first two female military vets to serve in Congress. I mean, she's got all the boxes. She's a female. She's a minority. She's young. She's a religious minority. She's a military vet. So they can't even say, well, she's against the troops. She's extremely progressive in an extremely consistent voting record. There is nothing you can get her on. The only thing you can get her on is stuff Obama did, which you shouldn't even be able to get her for that. Obama did it. Obama was the biggest war hawk ever. He was a hawk in dove's clothes. You want to talk about a hawk in dove's clothes? It was Obama. You want to talk about somebody who's warming up to Modi? I mean, we've got articles and articles of it, and we've got Obama admitting to it. We've got Obama calling Modi after the last week of his presidency to say goodbye to his friend. That's what we've got. So this smear against her is Tulsi. The best thing you can do is stay away from the media, stay away from them, continue the grassroots. The movement will spread, the word will get out. And as it does, and as people start hearing the good things and the disinformation backs off, then, that's when you can get the message out and people are going to hear the message of love and peace and service above self.